Hi everyone, Chris Ozscale here. I had a request from somebody to do a video on how I got my lift bridges to work, and first of all, there again, it's nothing I really came up with. There's a bunch of guys had a bunch of videos on YouTube that had a bunch of videos on how they did lift bridges and all. Eric's of Eric's Trains has a good one. There's several real good ones that I watched them all and searched them out and checked them all out, and basically them came up with what I felt would work best for what I had going on with my layout. So in the bridges I decided to use on the layout. And, I use these MTH arch bridges. I got a single arch over there and a double arch over here. And I used 30-inch, the 30-inch straight pieces in on the bridge. So that's what I used as far as the track and the bridge itself goes. First thing I did was I made these basically pads or bases for it to rest on. This here just happens to be a piece of 2x3. That's what I used there. Same on this side, a piece of 2x3, and that kind of gives it a pad for it to rest on when it comes down. And you set it down between the tables. This here is I believe it's 1x2, and I cut it to be kind of like my guides for when it comes down. It comes down in between the track here, in between the guides and lines, keeps it in line with the track. Basically, I drilled out the holes and ran some screws down in, and that's how I got them. The other thing you're going to have to do is trim all the tabs, the contact tabs, any of the clip tabs, all that stuff got to be trimmed off the end of the track and on both sides. And same goes for the straight track sections that you're using. You want it all trimmed off so that it could drop in and out. Otherwise those clips, it's not going to work. Another thing I did on this side was, there again, I used the 1x2s to make my pads again, so to speak, for my hinges. And the main thing is here, you want your hinge to be higher than the track itself. Because if it's not a little bit higher than this track, what's going to happen is when you go to lift it, and if you got it flushly mounted to your table, down here, without some riser to it to give it some lift, that it's above the track slightly, when you go to lift it, it's going to bind up on you. And I experienced that trying to rig it up so it mounted itself. What else? I also had to make this like frame for the bridge to sit in, and there again it's just 1x2 that I kind of boxed in so the bridge kind of seats into it, kind of acts like a cradle a little bit. And I believe I screwed with some wood screws. There's some holes in various spots on this bridge, and I think there's a setup on the ends of the bridges that I used to screw this cradle, so to speak, the bridge onto that itself. And then I inserted the tracks. Before I inserted the tracks, I ran my wire and soldered it. Soldered my grounds to the outside rails, just like you would on the rest of the layout, and my hot to the the inside, the center rail. Also, I mounted the circuit board or relay board for the blinking light. I mounted that underneath there too. And there again, they give you this little mounting clip or whatever. I think it goes inside of the way they design it is that it goes inside one of the piers, you know, and I just took it out and revamped it a little bit to screw it to the bottom here. Ran my wires down and just plugged them in. Also, I ran my wires around and kind of strung them up neatly together. The other thing you're going to have to do is you're going to have to get some nuts, some screws and bolts, and thread it. And I used these little lock bolts and little screws. You're going to have to go to the hardware store and figure out what lengths you need and what size to fit the holes properly. You might have to hog them out a little bit to get them down through your track, and that's what I use to mount the tracks in, to hold them in place. Because if you don't have them mounted in, it's just going to slide and slip around every time you go to move it. And what I did was the screws came through. Screws came through like these slotted girder parts underneath the bridge, so I had to get some washers. And what I did was they didn't fit properly in there, so I had to trim one side of the washer off to make one side flat, so it would rest against this girder underneath or whatever. You know, it's basically just a plastic mold, but it's supposed to resemble a girder. And like I said, I don't know how great the lighting is under here, how good this is coming, but, you know, and that's what I did in a few sections just to hold the track down. And, you know, the only thing I could say, the main thing is you're just going to have to make sure everything's lined up pretty perfect. You know, same with the track, you know, where it's going to meet up with on your table. You know, there's a couple spots where I had to, you know, add a screw like on the outside of the rail here, because it might have been tweaked up a little bit, and to hold it down so it was level and had a pretty good, you know, it met up with the track on the bridge pretty good. You know, like I say, the main things on this is just make sure everything's lined up. You know, it's going to take a little time. It's not brain surgery. You know, if I could figure it out, I'm sure anybody could figure this out. You know, the hinges I use, I believe those are 1-inch hinges. And that's the thing, you know, just make sure everything lines up good. You know, it's going to take a little while. It took me a little while to do it, and to get everything perfect. So, you know, when the train came across, it didn't derail or, you know, go over a jump on the track or whatever like that. So, you know, Tim, good luck with that. And if you have any more questions or anything, feel free to get in touch with me or drop a comment on the video. One other thing, I just want to go quickly over what I've been working on here. You know, in the last video, I've been working on that corner over there, trying to come up with like a shadow box tunnel and do something with that to give it the illusion that the road was going somewhere. And this is where I'm at with it right now. I'm gluing my styrofoam on it and you know, starting to build up my levels of styrofoam and where the tunnel is. And right now I got stuff glued together, clamped up, and letting it dry. So just want to give you a quick update, and that's where I'm at today. So thank you guys.